Morning, everybody. Everybody can hear me okay? Okay, yes, look, as Nev said, I've worked for Manil Group for 28 years, so I'll just give you a rundown. Excuse me if some of you have heard this before, but I'll just give you a rundown on what we do, and I've brought along a few samples of our products, which we'll pass around. So Manil Group is a privately owned company. It's owned by PeterTallent, who's based in Sydney, and the plant at Bomaderry is just one of our plants. So we have various plants around Australia. We have 3 flour mills, one at Manildra, which is where the name has come from, one at Gunnedah, and one at Narrandera. And we also have a smaller flour mill based at the plant in Bomaderry as well. We also have some overseas concerns. We previously have owned an ethanol plant in Italy, and we do have a starch plant in the US as well. We also are in partnership with the New South Wales sugar growers, and we refine the total New South Wales sugar crop. We also have interest in partnership with an oil processor, Manildra Oils, and recently we've gone into the meat business. So we purchased Cootamundra Abattoir, which is now called Manildra Meats, and we're in partnership with meat processing down at the old Bomaderry dairy co-op. So look, I'll just give a rundown on what we actually do at the Bomaderry plant. We're primarily a flour processor. So we bring in wheat and flour into the plant pretty much on a daily basis. You'd see the trains, the wagons that come in on pretty much a daily basis. So flour from the Manildra, well, the 3 flour mills, and also we buy in the wheat and we process that wheat into flour as well. Now that flour, I'll just grab some samples to pass around. So we start off with wheat, which I'm sure everybody's seen, and it's just milled into flour. So it's a very much physical process. It's just ground and milled to the right, and all the offal's thrown on, and we end up with the flour. So flour is fairly much the same as what you buy in the supermarket. Now, that's where our process starts. We then separate that flour into the carbohydrate fraction and the protein fraction. The carbohydrate fraction is starch, and the protein fraction is gluten. Now, it's just a very physical separation process. So the flour is made into a dough, just like you make a dough at home. So except we're fairly big in doing that. So we'll put it through at about 100 odd tonne an hour through the plant. So we have these massive dough mixers where the flour is just poured in and the water's added at the same time, and there's these huge mixers that just turn it up and make it into a dough, and then that dough is conditioned. So it sits there for a little while at a slightly elevated temperature, and then what we do, we then wash that dough with water, and what that does, that separates the starch from the gluten. So we have these large rotating screens which collect the gluten but allow the starch to flow through. So the gluten comes together as a large rubbery mass. The only further refining on gluten is basically it is squeeze all the water and excess starch out. It's then dried and milled and packed, basically. So you end up with a product that's about 75% protein. We sell some of the gluten locally, but the market in Australia is not big enough for the amount of gluten we make, so we export a fair bit into Asian markets, and we've got about a 50 or 60% share in the US market. Of course, the US, they're primarily corn-based, so most of their flour is used as flour rather than processed into gluten. The starch gets to go through a fair refining process, so it comes out as just a milky white suspension. So what we have to do with that, we put that through various machines that take out fibre, protein, gums, etc. So we purify that to get it as clean as possible. And basically, then what we do is we then have to spin out the excess water and again put that through a large dryer to expel all the moisture and then grind it, pack it, etc. The starch is basically the same as you'd see corn flour in the supermarket. So if you know there's wheat corn flour in the supermarket, that's wheat starch, just highly purified. We sell that mostly, we sell a lot to paper mills in Australia, some food applications, some industrial applications, but we also modify starches to change the characteristics of the starch, to change its gel temperature, its viscosity once it cooks up, and sell quite a bit into the Southeast Asian and Japanese markets as well. Now the starch is also the starting point for a lot of our other products. So we also make various types of glucose syrups. Now this first syrup is a brewer's syrup. So that's applied to the various brewers like Foster's in Australia. We make two types of brewer's syrups where we change the fermentability level in the syrup, where one's a high fermentable level at about 80%, and one's a lower fermentable level at around about 50%. Now the way the syrup's made, it actually starts off as starch. So starch is a very large molecule. It's a little bit like if you imagine a linked chain. It's a bit like a linked chain, but each of those links are glucose molecules. Now what we have to do, we break with enzymes and heat, we break those links to form the sugars. So if you break the links into single links, each of those single links is glucose. We break it into sets of 2 links, that's maltose. 3 links, maltotriose. So what happens is brewer's syrup is made up of various types of sugars, and we control the levels of those sugars by the amount of enzyme and the time we cook it for. So basically, once that starch molecule is broken, we then have to purify the product. With something like a brewer's syrup, basically the way we purify a brewer's syrup is basically by filtration and a little bit of carbon decolorization. Now that's done at around about 35% solids, which we then evaporate up to 70% solids for the brewer's syrup. That's applied mainly at the moment to the breweries in Foster's breweries in Abbotsford, Victoria, and Yatala up in Queensland. So we sell a few hundred tonnes of that every week to the breweries. Now the other one is the glucose syrup. That is basically made pretty much the same way as the brewer's syrup, but different enzymes are used in different amounts to make it. So it starts off fairly much the same as a brewer's syrup, but it's refined a fair bit more. So after filtration, we demineralize it. So it basically goes through ion exchange columns to take out all the ash content of the syrup and also the colour. It is then evaporated up to about 80% solids to give that final product. Now we sell typically 1,000 to 1,500 tonnes of that every week to the various confectioners around Australia. So probably any confectionery company you think of, we supply. So the Nestle's, the Darrells, etc., Cadbury's, pretty much a whole lot of it. And the big ones, they could take a couple hundred tonnes of that each week. Now, those syrups are actually made differently depending on what their end use is going to be. So if it's, for instance, for marshmallow, the sugar profile or sugar content of the syrup is changed to suit that particular product. If it's for a hard-boiled lolly, there'll be less sugar content in the syrup. Now, typically in confectionery, it's actually used in conjunction with sucrose, because you can't use straight sucrose in manufactured confectionery because it'll grain and crystallise, and the lolly will just fall to pieces. So glucose is added because it won't crystallise, and it's able to control the sweetness level and the consistency of the confectionery. If anyone wants to ask any questions while I'm going along, that's fine. Or basically to fortify the protein levels in their bread, because their flour typically has lower protein levels than. You can manufacture syrups from anything that's got a carbohydrate in it. So corn, in the US it's corn-based, it manufactures their syrups. You can make it from tapioca, rice, potato, all sorts of things you can make syrup from. So if there's a carbohydrate starch content in there, you can manufacture the syrup.
You can make ethanol from it too.
Yes, and you can make ethanol from it as well. So ethanol is made variously around the world from all sorts of products. In the US, it's mostly corn. In Brazil, it's sucrose-based. Other parts of the world, tapioca, potato, rice. So yeah, made from all those different ones.
What about ethanol?
Yep.
There used to be a plant for ethanol. Is that not the case?
Yeah, no, I'll get to that. Yeah, we certainly still do the ethanol. That's a big part of our business. And we make various grades of ethanol. Now, the main product we sell is the fuel grade ethanol, and it is actually basically 100% ethanol, so that's 200 proof ethanol. So basically, the ethanol is made from the waste stream of starch. To be able to manufacture the best quality starches and syrups, you have to throw off the poorer cuts of starch, which take with them the proteins and the gums, etc. Now, many years ago, before we started the ethanol in around about 1992, prior to that, all the waste components that were in the starch initially either ended up in the river in the very early days, or on our environmental farm, which used to stick out the best part of Bomaderry, because it still had all the carbohydrate and protein content in there. So in 1992 we started off the ethanol plant. Now, to manufacture ethanol, you basically take the waste component of the starch. The quality of the starch doesn't matter for the ethanol, because all that will be taken will be the starch components. So what we do, we cook the starch very similarly to manufacturing the glucose syrups. We break down the starch molecule into sugars. That's done at very high temperatures, up at around about 100 degrees Celsius. We then cool it to about 30 degrees, and we then add yeast. We propagate our own yeast. So as soon as the yeast hit the sugars, they start to consume the sugars. So we have fermentation times of around about 40 hours. So what happens is, over that period of time, the sugars are consumed by the yeast until there's no more sugars left. So we end up at around about 10 to 11% ethanol by the end of the fermentation process. That is then fed into our distillation plant. Now, depending on what grade of ethanol we manufacture, it goes through various columns. So you can get to about 96% ethanol naturally through natural distillation. Beyond that, you can't remove the water. So we get to around about 96%. If we're manufacturing a beverage grade, we have to refine basically everything out of it, so we end up with just very, very pure ethanol. We're at the moment looking at supplying various markets in Asia with that, because we can't basically. Ethanol, basically, if you're familiar with vodka, basically vodka is just ethanol diluted with water. So that's all vodka is. So you take that 96%, you add a very good quality of.
Originally, when the government were going to add ethanol to fuel, motor car fuel, I don't know what the percentage was that they laid down, but then all of a sudden, when it came out, it was 10% ethanol to the fuel ratio. That was way low compared with what they had originally said. Did that hurt the company at all?
Look, it has hurt the company. I think it's mandated that 6% of the fuel sold in New South Wales is to contain, that's how much ethanol is supposed to be. Now that the blend will be at 10%, but it's nowhere near 6%, because the oil companies have been able to apply for exemptions for whatever reasons. So in total, it's probably only about 2 or 3%. basically, we were all geared up based on what we were promised, and it hasn't eventuated. It's gone backwards. So yeah, in that regard, yes, it has hurt the company. So we have to look for other markets, because we've got markets in gluten, et cetera, which we have to supply into. So in order to do that, we have to keep producing the starch, which has to be made into various types of products. So we're looking at the moment at exporting glucose syrups overseas. We currently don't do that. So we're trying to get business overseas and also manufacturing more starch as well.
Is ethanol content in Asia and European markets the same as in Australia, or is it? Or do they vary?
It definitely varies. For instance, US is a lot of it's 10%, but there's also 85% ethanol. We've manufactured 85 or sold as 85% in Australia, but your car has to be set up for it. Currently, Holden cars, the car I drive, is set up for 85%. 85 runs fine if your fuel consumption's down a lot because of it, but you do get a little bit more. You basically need a flexi fuel vehicle for that. Quite big in the US. Places like Brazil, they'll run on 100% ethanol. So as long as the car's set up for it, it's fine. It burns very, very clean. 10% ethanol blend will cut down the tailpipe. Look, I think in the newer cars, no at all. I mean, initially,
Has there been any diesel, ethanol, combustible mix anywhere in the world?
yeah, there has. We actually trialled that many years ago. I think that was with the 95% ethanol in government buses, but it wasn't that straightforward a system. I believe in that because 95% ethanol was used, you had to use an emulsifier to combine the diesel with the ethanol. So it certainly has been tried, but I think in recent years it's been more about biodiesel, which are oil modified vegetable oil basis. Yeah, but it's certainly been looked at. With the grades of ethanol, we also manufacture various industrial grades, and they have to be basically denatured to formulations depending on what the end use of it is. So methylated spirits you see in the supermarkets, they're basically 95% ethanol, which has a chemical added. Various other blends we sell to aerosol manufacturers, perfume grades of ethanol, printing inks with various other chemicals, many types of products, food applications as well. But as I said, the fuel grade is by far the biggest one, and basically the fuel grade is typically 100% alcohol. You still allowed other alcohols in there, so we don't remove those other alcohols from the fuel grade alcohol, and basically it's donated with 1% petrol sold in bulk tanks. So we manufacture roughly, we have exported ethanol in bulk ships before as well, over to various parts of into Japan and into various parts of that. We basically we have to sell any ethanol we manufacture. So at times we have to store large quantities of ethanol for Kevlar, which burnt down many years ago. We lost one big go. But we also store a lot of it up in Sydney in large storage tanks as well. That's required. Now, when we manufacture the ethanol, there's still product left over for the ethanol, which we have to sell. So all the protein material, excess carbohydrate, complex carbohydrates aren't used, and the fermentation acids which are formed are all left over. Now, many years ago, we used to just irrigate that onto the farm. So we've extracted that from there, and we now manufacture that into stock feeds. So what we do, it comes out as a thin liquid at about 5% solids. We put it through a centrifuge to recover the suspended solids, and we then dry it. So it's a kind of flaky, powdery type product, and that's sold as a stock feed. The liquid part of it, the soluble solids part of it, we evaporate up to about 40% solids, and that's also sold as a stock feed. Most of this product is sold locally, but some is exported over to places like Indonesia and New Zealand. It's got a good nutrient balance in there, and that's blended in with other ingredients, and it's used mostly to feed cattle. So we manufacture a couple of hundred tonnes a day of each of these products daily, on a daily basis. So prior to that, all that material has been irrigated onto our farm.
So the evaporation from that process simply escapes?
No. What then happens, the waste from that material it's all collected. So what's evaporated from the process is collected, and it's sent across to our farm, across the road, and we have a full wastewater treatment process on the farm. So what we do, we treat all that water. The organics in there are basically used to manufacture gas. So that gas we send back to our methane gas we send back to the plant to run our boilers on. It only provides a small amount of energy required, but it's not wasted. With the water's fully treated and used back in the plant. So we bring back about 6 million litres of water on a daily basis back into the plant. Because we use a huge amount of water. I don't think there'd be enough water in Narra to run our process if we didn't bring it back. So it's a very, very dependent process. So we try to basically use everything that we manufacture. Now with the stock feeds, where you might notice if you look towards the back part of our plant, there's a big fair bit of construction going on at the moment. We're actually building a pelletising plant. So the syrup and the DDGS we're going to combine them, probably along with some other ingredients, and we'll form that into pellets, which will be used as a stock feed. The advantage of that is the dry product keeps very well, but the syrup product has only got a very short shelf life. So pelletising it will allow us basically to hold that product indefinitely and seek out further markets.
What's the carrying capacity on those trains?
Around about 70 tonnes. 70 tonne capacity in each wagon. Yeah.
60 wagons.
Look, we go through about 120 tonne of flour hourly. So you're going through around about 2,000 to 3,000 tonnes a day.
So it's a heavy train today you get?
Yeah, look, trains come in as we need them, so we get a couple of trains on a daily basis. So we'll bring it in, as I said, in favourites, flour and wheat. I don't know the exact amounts, but the train's too big to fit on site, so it has to be split. I think the largest trains we have been just over a kilometre long. So they're big, and we're the second biggest user of state rail in New South Wales behind BHP. BHP are the biggest user, and then there's us. And on those trains, we also send out a lot of containerised product. So most of our containerised product goes to Port Botany, and the Manila Group as a whole would be the biggest user of containerised product out of Port Botany. At any one time, we'll have 500 to 600 containers on site, whether they be full or empty, waiting to be filled up.
Any go out by road transport?
Yeah, they do. We try to avoid that as much as possible because of the cost. But if, for instance, somebody needs something very, very quickly, or we haven't quite made the train to get something onto a ship, yes, it'll go by road. We also sell containerised product over to Western Australia. As mentioned earlier, I mean, the recent new business is the meat business. And the business down here, it's a partnership that Manila is part of. I think we've got about a 49% share in it, and I don't have a lot to do with it. then the meat's cut, packaged, and sold off. Now, a lot of that meat comes from our own abattoir, which we purchased recently in Cootamundra, where I think they slaughter many hundreds of beasts there each day. So we take that meat. No, I'm not sure where the majority of the meat goes, but they're slaughter, I think it's basically cattle and sheep up there at the moment, and it's only cattle that come down here. But we also have quite a number of cattle on our own farm at the moment too. I think that's could be a couple of thousand cattle at any one time now that we're running on there, and it's very nutrient rich on there because of the amount of water we've irrigated on there over the years and the amount of organic material we've put on there. So that's basically probably it. If anyone's got further questions. Look, ours just comes from we just via council, so we don't have any. Look, certainly all the ethanol's removed from it, definitely. We don't want to sell ethanol with it because it's a yield loss for us, which is a fair cost. But in saying that, the syrup, because it will degrade over time, the syrup can form small amounts of ethanol. And we were having issues in New Zealand with syrup that sat around for a fair while. And it wasn't so much the cattle of the ethanol. Apparently, it was only a fraction of a percent. But the issue was that we sell the product in big bladders. The bladders that break and burst and cause a huge mess. But they couldn't keep cattle away from the product, absolutely. On the site in Bomaderry, around about 280 people in total. So the plant operates around the clock 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's operating all the time. It operates on 4 shifts, 12-hour shifts. So there's different shift arrangements, but basically there'll always be somebody on. I'm sure there is. We've automated a lot over the years, but they keep investigating processes as well. So the processes have changed a lot over the years. So it's a lot more automated than what it used to be. For instance, in our packing applications, it used to be all manual, operated full bags, on the shelves, packing on the pallets. Now it's all robotic. That part of it. So there is. I'm sure there's still scope for it.
It's interesting that you stop there over there. The protein in the American wheat is so low that they've got to add gluten that they import from Australia.
Yep.
Is that a characteristic of the spring wheats, short season wheat they grow in America, as compared to our winter wheats, which we can get the protein's pretty high here, especially in the hard wheat?
Yep.
And the second question is, since the demise of the wheat board, do you have trouble with your wheat quality and sourcing the protein that you need?
Look, to your first question, yes, that is the reason. And look to the second question, no, we don't have problems. We carefully look at all that. We have a number of people employed specifically to buy wheat. Probably got ex-wheat board people, I would imagine as well. So a number of people that actually buy the wheat. So we pre-buy the wheat the season before, and make sure it's blended to the right ratios, etc. In saying that, we can pretty much handle any sort of quality of wheat and any protein level in our process. Maybe more difficult with flour mills where they're selling flour. Because we're not selling flour down here, we're manufacturing from the flour. It just basically changes the balance of products that we make. So if it's very high protein wheat, which we've got quite high proteins at the moment, we tend to make more protein and less starch products. So it changes the amount of wheat and the balance of products that we actually handle. Yeah, we can handle any type of wheat, yeah. Basically, that's a partnership with VOC. So in manufacturing ethanol, you manufacture CO2 at the same time. So in breaking down the glucose molecule is broken down to ethanol and CO2, roughly around about the same amounts of each. So in manufacturing ethanol, we're manufacturing an equivalent amount of CO2. So we recover the CO2, it's compressed by VOC, and we make it's a very high grade of CO2 because of the process it comes off. So they basically just purified and sold mostly mill some wheat down at the Bomaderry plant. We put a flour mill in a few years ago, so that's a smaller. Larger plants, as I said, are up at Manilda and Narangba and Gundar, and we actually mill all the wheat into flour up at those plants. So,
as I understand it, the actual milling flour can be a very volatile thing, not to get a nasty explosion.
Yeah.
If I noticed quite often hundreds of call-outs, local fire brigade, what happened that seem to go on around your place.
Yeah.
If the milling process was to get into environmental dangerous situation, did blow up, and we've got ethanol there as well, which is combustible. Okay, how much of Bomaderry will be left?
Actually dust explosions would be worse than the ethanol explosions. So basically with the dust explosion, you have a double whammy, because what will often happen is if you got dust in the air that ignites and explodes, it then dislodges everything sitting on beams and rafters, and you have an even bigger explosion. So basically with the dust process, there's constant cleaning. There's always a danger in a drive you can have an explosion, but we have a lot of safety measures on there. You've got pressure sensors, so if something ignites, it causes a pressure wave. That pressure wave's sensed, and that flame is actually then put out straight away. It's doused with so it's pretty safe on that. With the ethanol plant, we've got a huge amount of firefighting capability. We have our own fire crews on site. We have water cannons, pressure sensors, differential sensors, link up to the fire brigade. So a lot of the times when the fire brigade comes.
Glad I live in Shoalhaven.
The ethanol plant's about 2 metres behind my office. So.
Is the company well supported by government for research and development?
Yeah, look, it is pretty well. I mean, I don't get into that side of it, but certainly there's grants that are available, and we do apply for them when they're there. So we have a research and development money available. We certainly try to. They'd be pretty game to drink that, because there's a product called Bitrex which is added to it, which is the most bitter substance known. It's only added a few parts per million, but it gives it a horrible taste. But apparently people drink it. I had a call from a hospital once asking me if I could tell them how many standard drinks there were in a 500ml bottle of methyl.
Thank you, Peter, for a most interesting talk and a most informative talk. For us people who have sort of lived in Bomaderry for quite a number of years, it's just wonderful sort of driving past the early days down at Manilda and early beginnings, and now it's got gradually bigger and bigger. But it's wonderful to know what's happening behind those walls. And we thank Peter today for answering all the questions, giving us all the information, and now we know what's happening at Manilda.
Thank you.